Yesterday, one of the concerns that a lot of people had were, what happens if I'm not a great communicator? What happens if I really don't know how to connect and communicate? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time, even just a little bit of time, talking about something that I know is very important to all of us, which is communication. Professor Thomas Harrell conducted a study at Stanford University, and he conducted this study and identified the traits of the most successful MBA students. The results were not surprising to me, but perhaps surprising to many, which is that grade average had very little bearing on people's ultimate success in life. The most common trait of successful individual graduates out of that university was verbal fluency, their capacity to communicate. You know, my old man, my dad, made sure very early on that I developed communication skills. This was really important for him, and he just got this lucky, I suspect. But he made sure that early on in life that I was in theater. He made sure that early on in life I volunteered at the church and got involved in the youth group in church, and as a result of that, began even at times doing ministry on stage in the pulpit, you know, and actually lecturing, etc. And then when I got to high school, I was advised by individuals to make sure that I got involved in speech and debate. So I'm just saying, as an adult looking at our kids, let's make sure that we're really investing in verbal fluency. And for me, that was one of the big deal. You know, the gift of gab is what my father used to call it, but verbal fluency is what, you know, fancy professors call it. So let's do a few very simple tips for improving your communication. I mentioned this only briefly yesterday, but I want to really dive into it. I have to say, the answer is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Now, there are many different forms of communication that you need to think about as you practice in expressing your views. One form of communication that a lot of people are very familiar with right now, particularly the millennial generation and younger, is the digital form. And that's important. So let's not, by the way, just snub our noses at the young generation that is extraordinarily good at digital communication, because we all have to be extraordinarily good at digital communication. I am dying to be better at digital communication. I'm getting involved in Instagram a lot more. The other platforms are more challenging to me, but this is something that we all have to be good at. So practice, practice, practice your digital communication. Physical meetings and interaction, right? So how do you actually engage with individuals? We're going to be spending a lot more time next week talking about developing that sort of instant intimacy and that connection with another individual. So that's to come. But for now, really think about your communication and your dialogue. Start asking yourself, where can you be better? How can you be more authentic? How can you spend a little bit more time practicing in that area? And then, frankly, even standing in front of people in crowds. In my early days, when I was trying to be better at public speaking, I would stand in front of a mirror. You know, and why stand in front of a mirror instead of just a wall? Because even that reflection back has an individual, an audience on the other side that you're reacting to. So just literally practice. Take some things and read it out loud in front of a mirror. Any of these things you can do. One of the great things, I was so honored recently to have had an honor bestowed upon me by a global organization called Toastmasters. I got the Golden Gavel Award for Toastmasters, which is the celebration of leadership and communication skills globally. And people like Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra and others have won that award. And I was deeply humbled. I was particularly humbled and really just moved because my father early on had told me about Toastmasters. He had told me that that's how he, early on as a young man, and remember, my dad was a ditch digger, right? He was a construction worker. But somewhere along the way, he had read about Toastmasters and he went to a Toastmasters course. So once again, there's so many ways you can learn and practice, practice, practice your communication skills. Please, it's critical to you. Please, please, please. Second thing that you can do to be better at communications is read, right? Read. Just improve your vocabulary. The ability to have a robust vocabulary is so important. I went to an old-fashioned school. And that old-fashioned school had a thing called vocabulary cards. And I would sit there and we would have to study 100 vocabulary cards every week. And then we would be tested on those in English. And we would go over, what's the word, what's the meaning, what's the word, what's the meaning. You know, I think today I make up a lot of words today, and I get made fun of for doing it. Complex stuff, and I can't quite figure it out, but I make up a word, and I'm grasping for it. All of that's fine, but really I want you to think about expanding your vocabulary, because as you expand your vocabulary, it has an impression on other people relative to your intellect, and so it really is worth reading and studying as much as you possibly can, just so that your knowledge and your communication expands more. Now, with all of that communication, with all of that outbound, don't forget to listen, right? 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, as they say. Don't forget to listen. It is the foundation of communication. There's that wonderful old story that has 2 individuals speaking, and at the end of the conversation, the individual thought that that person was so compelling, and all they had done was listened the whole time. So one of the best ways to really engage with another individual, particularly if they've got a gift for gab, is to be willing to listen. Ask the curious questions and extend those curious questions to people so that they can engage with you. Here's what I'd say. Think about this rule of thumb in communication. Don't communicate more than you need to in order to get them to communicate. In other words, in a dialogue with somebody, don't be the person that just throws up all over them with knowledge and information and da-da-da, da-da-da. Create an environment where you say enough, you pause, you invite them to come in to the dialogue, and it really becomes a two-way dialogue. And ideally, yeah, sure, they can have the lion's share of the dialogue. You don't have to compete. You don't have to compete for that. Now, there was something that a very, very dear friend of mine, I had mentioned him earlier, Greg Seal. Greg Seal recruited me into Deloitte very early on. Greg Seal taught me something that has been very interesting. It was called the Johari window. Sounds very mystical, but it was actually a study of 2 individuals inside of MIT, Joe and Harry, so it was the Johari window. The Johari window basically says, as you approach somebody to communicate with them, match their style. Some people have Johari windows that are like this. And so when you communicate with them, if you're communicating them like this, then you're going to overwhelm them, right? And they're going to want to be defensive against you and your massive and aggressive communication style. But if, on the other hand, they're a big communicator and you come and talk like this, they're not going to listen to you. They may not even respect what you have to say. Your job is to match and fluctuate. Now, from my perspective, that's one of the reasons early on I apologize to you, because I know that I have learned to keep you awake, to engage you, to have this kind of a strong communication style. It's obviously not what I use when I'm walking into the room of a CEO of a corporation or an investor or a politician that I'm intriguing and interested to lobby for one of my philanthropic causes. I am matching them. Adjust the Johari window, mirror your behavior with them. Learn to read nonverbal cues, right? Rolling your eyes, of course, those are the obvious ones, but even simple things like pushing back from a chair. You'll get better over time, and there's lots of books that you can read on this subject of nonverbal communication clues, but make sure that you are attentive. Look, I happen to be an empath. I am very empathetic. I feel what other people are feeling, and as a result, I can adapt to that. Sometimes I ignore it, and that's my own fault, but you can at least watch, because pretty much all of the tells happen in physicality eventually. Look, I think the ultimate thing to consider is just be yourself. Be yourself. Now, a friend of mine said, well, what if yourself's an asshole? No. You need to be yourself and try to meet an individual with care, with consideration, with love, with attention, with where you're going to go together, where you're going to create together. A dialogue is nothing more than a co-creation. It's a collaboration. It's a give and take. It's an elevation, stepping up little by little. It's two-way. What's your mission? Okay, your mission for today is to conduct a dialogue, right? Let's conduct a dialogue. Maybe let's pick a topic like this course. You've now been taking this course. You're into multiple days of this course. Conduct a dialogue with another tribe member about this course. How about one step further? Conduct a dialogue, which is an informative dialogue. Conduct a dialogue with somebody that you have a relationship with about this course. Share with a friend about this course, not just a tribe member who's already been here. Now let's step outside. let's really think about somebody in that list of individuals that you might want to build deeper relationships with, that by calling them up, that they might be intrigued by hearing more about this course. I'm just picking a topic, right? You pick your topic, but purposefully go in and watch yourself and follow these tips around having a more effective communication in that form. All right, my whole intention here was very simple, which is to get you to recognize that communication skills are not a barrier to you being successful. It's just something you have to practice. Go practice. I'll see you soon.